So let's start with the first thing we did is we were playing Big Ball. Me and Ben Savage here versus Carl and Thomas. And let's put the volume down a little bit. Let's just watch some Big Ball rallies.
And which big ball?
Yeah, so this first one is the Spike Ball Big Ball. So not great. It felt pretty much
The
like
original
a
rally ball.
yeah, the original rally ball. So like good size, but felt horrific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
Remind me.
inconsistent. And with no boundary?
No boundary here. And these are just the rallies. I'm not showing all the aces. We'll get to those in a second. Um, just to show that they're still possible. A lot of people worried like, oh no, it's not really possible to ace with a big ball. It is. It's just that little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then here is using the Premier Spike balls that we got from Premier Spike, and we're gonna be hopefully the balls that Premier Spike come out with later this year. But don't know what your guys' opinion of them, but from my opinion, they felt great, and it was amazing how consistent all 10 were that we got from the factory.
Yeah, I did like that ball a lot. Second favorite so far.
And this is the one that we used in the Chicago final, game one.
No, that ball is their newest one. That's probably my favorite one so far.
Okay.
It's a little thinner than this one and grippier.
Hmm.
And so here are some aces, mainly from Tom, just showing that if you don't have good footwork and you still play against a top level server, you will still get aced. It just takes the unattainableness out of serves where if you have great footwork and good touch, you won't get aced. But if you're just a little bit off, you're going to get punished. But if you're 100% on, you should be able to get the touch. And that's the difference. Because when we have right now with the Pro Ball, if you hit certain serves, they are unattainable to get, no matter how good footwork you have. And so yeah, that was the big ball footage. Um,
You know, still
to
quite a bit.
share. Yeah, I mean that was across 3 games. There's quite a few aces. Especially again if people haven't played against Tom for the first time, or Ben hadn't played against Tom for quite a while. I'm playing against Tom again for the first time in a while. And if you're not used to reading his toss, which is the biggest thing to move on your new midpoint, and you're just a little bit late 'cause it's taking you time to really read the toss, you're going to get aced by it the first few times before you start to really read it. But then once you read it, it obviously becomes a lot easier. And I think if you watch most finals and semi-finals, most aces are actually in the first few serving rotations. They're not done at the end of game 2 or 3. They're done at the end of or the start of the first game because people are still just like connecting their footwork to the server's cadence and their trigger time. But yeah, um, hopefully it just shows that there was some still good rallies and some enjoyable touches. There was a couple of points though that I'm just like that can never happen. I think there was one that you say like you shouldn't jump Tom
Mm.
like here, but this is the biggest problem in the game right now, and we've talked about boundary too. Like this, like his range is limited. Carl was touching Ben's max pull. You're touching his max push, and yet Ben can just do this as an out ball, and you're jumping at 7 feet, and you can't get there. And had you ran, you wouldn't have ran and got it either.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
The only way that you would have been able to get there running is if you
shot
hadn't
for
been, yeah. And then if you'd have gone beforehand, let's say you
somebody
went,
else.
yeah. If you already gone now, he would just drop or he would just hit a push because you're not defending the push line.
Right, right. Yeah,
And I
it's
think,
tough.
yeah.
Hang on.
I was just gonna say, like, I think when we're gonna talk more about boundary, but like when we decide the size of the boundary, like the logical approach needs to be basically, you should either be able to, in this position, Tom, you should either be able to touch the ball as it's ascending, and the hitter chooses like a diagonal hit with not incredible speed because it will go out if they hit it so hard because they're doing a diagonal trajectory, or they should be able to now choose to chip you and they say, oh, damn, Tom's right at the range. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now chip you, hit a more vertical trajectory, make sure it goes over you and towards whatever boundary line we have. But therefore, with the vertical trajectory, it gives you more time to now turn your hips and run if you want to go to point C. And basically, what I'm saying is, like, the boundary size as athletes should be dictated by that principle. Like, you should either be able to touch a diagonal hit on the way up, jumping at 7 feet when the ball's set over the rim, or if the hitter chooses the vertical trajectory to chip you, you now get more time and therefore you turn and run. You can't have both, which basically is what we have in the sport right now. You have both with old rules, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. And as we see in this clip here, I could have touched this if I had planted it and tried to jump higher, right? Because I could jump a lot higher than this. Or if I had turned and ran it. But
without
again, the issue is
speed doesn't. But without the boundary, the speed is more. So with a boundary, even if he hits this diagonally, it wouldn't go as quick. So you would have therefore more time to stop and jump higher. But you don't have the time to jump higher right now because everything's going so quick.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say, the speed of it is tough, and like because he could hit that option, it's just such a strong option that I always need to be like half prepared for that and the other option. So I'm kind of playing this weird middle ground where I'm like half jumping and half getting ready for him to hit like a push or a drop or something too. Where already from when I've played boundary, I still make this mistake with boundary, and I always correct myself. I'm just like, hey, don't jump, don't do that half jump thing. Like either you just run everything down, or if they're gonna chip you and you want to get it up like from close, really jump and touch it. There's not this like weird middle ground where I'm it kind of just getting burnt most of the time on this. Like, yeah, that's the biggest issue. Even with the bigger ball, without a boundary, it's just you could hit it so hard and so like far still.
Like imagine that was a pro ball. That would have went 4 times harder, and it would have went another 5 feet higher.
Yeah.
And just think from like a sport perspective, how like I love Ben. Ben knows I love him, but like just think how bad of a decision this is. Like from a sporting perspective, he's now trying to hit on 2. This mine is a defensive touch. He's hitting this on 2 at the defense who are within the range laterally, and he's still choosing to hit towards him instead of setting me right on my right hand with not that much height, and we would say GG's, you're never getting a touch. He's hitting it at the defense who aren't rotated, we're in the range that he's going to hit, but yet we still win the point because he can do that. Like, what a stupid game.
They're rewarded for it.
And then he gets rewarded for like a poor decision because it's possible. And like we're almost so used to this that we don't even think twice of it. Like the amount of clips I could roll up of just people bad receive, bad set over the rim with too much height, and yet they now get the option to absolutely boom it too high and too far for anyone to touch and win the point. Despite having bad footwork, bad quality of touch, and a bad set, yet you get a cheat code. It's like, yeah, so silly. And then even if we get into some of the serves, like just to break it down for people, just to like show why people have aced. Tom steps, Ben steps. Ben's good right here. Ben's a little bit late to read the toss. Tom tosses it now. Ben should have already started his new shuffle step and gone to the new midpoint between the lefty cut and lefty reverse because Tom's right is not available right now. He's right now between Tom's left and right. But as soon as Tom tosses this ball out of his right hand, now he shouldn't be between the midpoint of the righty cut and lefty cut. He now just needs to worry about the lefty cut and lefty reverse. Ben is a little bit late. I mean, now because he's late, look when the ball hits the net. His feet are in the air. If your feet are in the air when the ball hits the net, you now don't get as much reach. And because he doesn't get this reach, he misses it. And it's a bad touch. It's just like the logic of if you're catching a ball, it's much easier to catch a ball if your feet are on the floor than if you're having to run while making the catch. And by the time the ball hits the net here, your feet should be on the new midpoint, not in the air. So you have from the time Tom tosses it to it hits the net to be from midpoint between the lefty cut and righty cut, now between the lefty cut and lefty reverse, because you know Thomas has to hit left-handed. And I'm saying all of this as like a mini clinic/tip is because all these serves are receivable. It's now poor footwork that's let us down. So now look, again, Tom takes a step to the left. I do not mirror his step because I'm worried about him tossing and hitting a righty. So now, if he now does a quick toss left and hits the lefty, I'm not going to get over to the max range because I did not mirror his step. If he doesn't do a step here, I'm fine. But Tom does a step. I do not do a step to my left. Therefore, if he now hits a quick toss and hit on his lefty and lefty cut, I'm more than just one shuffle step away from this line that Tom can achieve, even with a big ball with his left hand. And he does. And same thing again. Ben's just a little bit late. Again, he's getting used to Tom's toss. Right now he should already be moving to the new midpoint between the righty cut and righty reverse because the lefty's not available anymore. Ben goes, but look, by the time the ball hits the net, his right foot's not on the floor. Because his right foot's not on the floor, he has less reach. Because he has less reach, it now comes off his thumb and moves too quick for him. He's dead. He's just trying to sync Thomas's movements, and it's hard to sync someone's movements when you haven't seen them before. Again, now he's already moving right when Thomas has already tossed it on his left. He's struggling, and he does struggle.
That one's
And it's the same here. Steps right, Ben steps right. And then Thomas then says, okay, cool, you're good. But now, because Ben's probably expecting a lefty cut, Thomas hits the lefty reverse. It's there. He's actually a decent position, decent footwork. He shuffles a little bit away from the net, which reduces his reach. You got to think about it like your protractor. The closer you are, the more range you're taking. The further away, you're less range you're taking. If Ben comes one step forward, he gives himself a tiny bit less time. But now he's touching it with this middle third of his hand, not just his fingertips. And that's the difference in getting a great quality of touch or not. But it's a great serve by Tom, but it's not unattainable. But it still demands a very high level of footwork and quality of touch from the receiver. This is the same. Thomas right now has not managed to sync his movements with my tosses yet. He doesn't know. I've taken a step right. He takes a step right. He then bites a tiny bit on the right, but he doesn't bite. He just shifts his weight. And because he shifts his weight, he now moves late for the left. And because he moves late, he's not going to get to a quick serve with decent jump and good lane. But for the rest of the week, and you crossed your feet. But the rest of this week, you cake these. Because again, it's this moment that people are really trying to get in sync when you first play against a new player. It's the trigger time. And it's this toss. Now I've tossed the ball. Thomas should already be moving from here to between the lefty cut and lefty reverse because that's the only serves available. It's not until now, when the ball's already moving towards the net, that Thomas is moving. Therefore, he's going to be late and he's going to get aced. So the only reason I did this is just so people can understand that your footwork needs to be fantastic regardless. Bigger ball just reduces the maximum speed that someone can attain and the maximum range because the ball takes up a bigger surface area on the net. But the depth of serving increases because now you need to think more about your trigger time. You need to think more about your combos. You need to think more about your spin. You need to think more about, do I mix in a jam there? Do I think more about going slow and then going quick? There's more depth than right now just smashing an unattainable serve by hitting absolute perfect netting with max spin or a lot of spin and a huge amount of speed. And it is unattainable. It doesn't say it happens all the time, but again, it happens quite often, and it will only happen more often as the sport continues to progress. Any final words on that before we get into some bounce footage?
Just real quick, bouncing off of what you just said. From me playing so far, in the Midwest, and from these clips, and just I think I said this here when we were doing this testing. I had said it is harder to ace for me. But the bigger ball is also a little bit easier for me to land. So you'll notice the variety of serves I go for more. I'm mixing up things purposefully, and it's not just me stepping out, hitting a banger of a serve that I just know that even if you do the right things, you're really likely to mess it up. Now I know, if you have good fundamentals, you're going to receive it. So now it's more a game to me where I'm trying to mess up your fundamentals. Where before, I would still do that from time to time, but it wasn't as rewarded. It was more let me just, similar to hitting, let me just hit a banger.
Yep.
That's likely going to be the answer, right? It was just kind of brain dead.
Yeah, I agreed. And because of that, it made you think more about serving, not less, which was good. And also, as you said throughout the week, your serve consistency went up massively because with a bigger ball, bigger surface area, bigger target for your eye to track, it's actually easier to land serves with a bigger ball, which massively helps with the double fault issue, as well as promoting you to play more points.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, you'll see in the footage, I do way different things than what I've done throughout the season. So
Just to conclude on the big ball and give some people some stats. The stats we had on big ball was 37% side outs, 15% rallies, 20% aces, 27% double faults. So double faults went down around 8%. That will continue to get better as we get better at defense and people want to put more serves on. And the fact that we will get better at serve consistency the more we practice, with a bigger ball especially. Aces total around 20%. That decreased 5% from what it was um, in Eisen Segasima versus In System, but again can fluctuate depending on the quality of servers and quality of receivers on net. Side outs 37%, and then rally total 15%. So a 5% increase on rallies with just a bigger ball, which is a decently dramatic increase. But again, still not perfect, especially if we want to get a much more of a rally-based sport with around 20 to 25% rallies at least. All right. With that said, let's we don't have many clips, but we have some clips of big ball plus bounce. And for the viewers watching, we did bounce where the ball could only bounce outside the 7-foot circle. Otherwise, it just felt too overpowered. Yeah, just a couple of clips. I didn't include a lot. We also did some with boundary bounce and big ball. But I think we all sort of decided as the week went on that just bounce wasn't a legitimate um, rule to test, given that if we want a sport with 20 to 25, 30% rallies, the space you're going to need for courts, if you're playing with a bounce, is going to be crazy. You're not going to be able to put many courts on a field because there's going to be rundowns happening all the time. Imagine several courts running down 40, 50 feet off net for a potential touch. The potential collisions that you're going to get is crazy. As well as, different skill levels. Like what happens if you're playing at the beach, or what happens if you're playing now at turf, or what happens if it's quite dead turf. And yeah,
yeah,
then about you guys think about the bounce and in general.
got anything on?
I mean, just like you said about playing at the beach, if you're playing as a rec player or for the first time on the beach and you're playing a tougher game than in the pros, then I just think that's not really uh, spectator friendly. Plus, all the different bounce levels of turf, grass, uh, different type of grass or indoor turf, outdoor turf. It's going to be like just too different and too complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found it fun when we tried it. It was like fun, but watching games back is where I had some issues of it. It kind of like it was slower, like the skill of setting from like getting a long rundown and waiting for it to bounce and then timing your set. It just became slower in that way, and I still felt like ripping was like one of the most optimal options. Yeah, I think that was my one of my main concerns with it, and then the look of it, and just like the game in general. I don't think there's another sport out there where it's a passing sport, right? In volleyball and spike ball, we pass the ball. We have three sets, um, along with a bounce. I don't think there's any sport like that. That's not to say it's wrong to not to be unique, right? But um, it's just very odd in that way to see someone touch the ball, let it bounce, and then go from there. And yeah, I just again, I thought it was fun. I just didn't think it was like the best optimal thing we could do, and it comes with a whole slew of other issues.
Yeah, I think like some things we tested, I think they could be like a good branch for Roundnet in the future, but it won't be like the actual tree of Roundnet. Like we got to sort out this tree before we maybe have indoor tournaments in squash courts with a bounce, or indoor tournaments with a bounce, or you know, different variations. Similar to football has futsal and 5-a-side and 7-a-side. But that comes after you actually have the traditionally successful version, right? That's sort of I think what we're trying to find, and I don't think bounce is going to be the way.
Yeah. I should note real quick too with bounce that we already see people like just random people on like Instagram stuff when Spikeball posts a clip when people have like a soft touch where the ball hits the player and then they could set it again. People already freak out and think that that is stupid because they're used to playing at the beach or however they do, and they're like, "Oh, this is easy. That makes it easy." We're showing a bounce too. Like I just think it's just it being so weird is so like off-putting to some new players as well if that were to be like the competitive norm. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like Em said, it'd be very strange if the pro players are playing with an easier rule set than those at the beach.
Yeah, I think that is one of the pillars of the sport, having 3 touches and a bounce. Or, no bounce.
Yeah. All right, let's the rest of the footage is some clips of big ball plus a 30-foot boundary as well as a 25-foot boundary. We tested different boundaries at different times. I think there's also some no drop zone footage in there too.
Our propaganda.
And these are just rallies. I'm not including the aces that went on throughout the week. There was still a fair amount. But I think it's more entertaining just to watch these rallies of what the gameplay could and should be like in a more balanced setting. And then we can share some of the stats we got after.
And are you playing 30 feet here?
Yep. This is where we played with no drop zone. We played it as the 7-foot circle, so that was dead. I personally think the only way we do a no drop zone is just on hits, not on serves.
Right. Yep.
And just to stop whiff hits. Just to play that back, that was one of the clips we talked about before, Tom, about how people can get smart with boundary hitting.
Mhm.
Where this is the one where you saw both, where Sunny and Carla, and you just spun it just to maximum of 30 feet, so it stayed in bounds, and just away from Carl and in between Sunny. It's just like, I think some people think, oh, we're off net, like we can just boot it on. No. If the defense are there, you have several options. You can try and lob it over them. You can try to hit it between them. You can now try to like spin it between them like you did. You can also rip it really hard at them. Sometimes people think that, oh, you just can't hit hard anymore. I hate this game. No, you can hit
No,
hard.
you
You can hit
can.
low and hard. You can hit low and hard and it will stay in. Or you can hit it really hard at the opposition, knowing that their quality of touch isn't going to be great, especially if they're not very balanced athletes. This is something Jules and I did in Bucharest a huge amount. Anytime we were set to a set we didn't really like, we didn't just boot it on and give them an easy conversion. We just ripped it hard at them. And if it went out that side the boundary twice out of 10, we could live with that because the other 8 points we'd probably win. And that was better than just booping it on and probably losing 8 of the points by just booping it on. And this is just a very good example of, yeah, the depths of hitting. Instead, if this wasn't big ball boundary, you would have just ripped the shit out of this and you'd won the point every time. It would have went another 40 feet.
Feels like volleyball with that too. When you get a bad set, it's off. You're just like, all right, what can I do? Well, differently. Similar to volleyball, but still feels so unique in its own. spike ball way that you can just rip it at someone, or you can lob it, or you can look for a little drop or something, you know?
Yeah. Some more footage. I think this is the last day. Me and Sunny playing against you and Adam.
See, I just want to note too, while we're watching Boundary, like in all the clips I've seen so far of Boundary, like it looks already like what we've been playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where if we see something like bounce, it just kind of like it looks like a different game, right? Where this it looks and feels the same. Some people try to say it seems slower, but I've seen people like post Boundary clips and
Yep.
like comments of people that like they're confused whether there is a boundary or not, which is good in my opinion because it's like you can't
Yep.
even really tell. The only time you could tell is if it's like way off net or just like an off net set, and like you have to kind of do like a more of like a lob or something, and especially with the right
Yeah.
size boundary, right? With the right size boundary, we'll see the game looks more normal and natural.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect example of Sunny on this next hit. So not a great set by me. I'm setting him into the defense. This is why I'm really loving the non-server can start wherever they want. It just demands less footwork for you and your partner to get in system. And so it would stop as time goes on. Setters just keep on setting Sunny here. Sunny actually had an injured left hand, so it was a little bit even harder to set him a little bit lefty. He had to get it really right so he could flick it. But anyway, right there. And then he, again, if this was a pro ball, even though you guys are here, you guys aren't touching this. He's going to rip this so far, so high. You're never touching this on the way up, and it's gone. Like, what? It wasn't a great set. I'm setting it towards the defense, and yet he'd win the point every time. Now, with a boundary and big ball, he could either hit it at you really hard and test your touch, or he could now try to hit it low and through you guys and try to find a gap, or he could do this vertical over you both, setting you at the back of the court, like in volleyball, or back of the boundary line, forces you for a big point C rundown touch. And it's Tom, it's very unlikely you're going to be in system now when you're hitting because you have to run so far back. Now, look, bang, you're not in system. In system would be opposite Adam here at the net. You're not, you're out of system. So now, like, when teams are out of system, the opportunity to rallies to go on and on increase massively. And it's basically the first team to get back in system that usually wins the rally. And this is how it is in a lot of pro sports. And this time it's a great hit by you. And so you still won the point. And that was the same. Like that rally there, that rally that we just saw, is basically who's going to get in system first. So receive, you're out of system. You're not opposite the ball and at the net. You want to be 2 more steps over to your right. Okay, Adam jams you with an over the rim set. It's a great body touch by Sunny. And then I am not in system. My left foot is not at the net, and I should be opposite him, which is 1 step to the right. So it makes the hit a little bit harder, but still, it's a great set by Sunny. Great touch by you guys. And then, okay, Adam's not in system. He didn't get enough height on his touch, so he's now put you under pressure because you have to react quickly. And Adam didn't have enough time to get his ass opposite the ball and at the net in time. Therefore, it's going to be hard to put this ball away. You now reactive set, a little bit off net. Adam's best choice is sort of put it on or could have ripped it hard at me. But then look, the first team to now get in system is now us. And now we're going to put it away if it's a good set.
Yeah.
And you've still had a chance of getting a touch with just you have a lower chance because you had to do an armbar touch versus an easy point V touch.
Yeah, definitely get in system, or you have to be really creative or do something a little extra, either from the set or hitter.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to show this just for you, Tom, because you don't make many of these great sets. I think it's fair we.
This was out of the boundary too, I believe.
Yeah,
So yeah,
great set, great push.
cool highlight. I loved it. I think we had 3 of these throughout the week. I remember Scott, I had one of these for you, and I think Sonny and I had one where we were like out of the boundary on our touch and had a big setback and got the point. Um, I'm just so excited to see like the potential of more plays like this and
Agree.
more highlights like this because yeah, these feel awesome, especially with yeah. No, I'm just excited to see the potential of this.
Agreed. I just wanted to emphasize this point here. Like, right now, we're not doing non-server rotates. Can be where they want. So we now have from the time of the ball leaving my hand until Adam saying the ball now to get in system. Now, me and Sunny are in system, opposite each other. Eyes are on the set within the distance of the ball to the net. So there's a good chance we're going to get a touch here. This is the whole point of why the non-server being and starting where they want is a huge thing for the sport and makes total sense from a 360 perspective. Like, from a 360 perspective, you're not playing sides, you're playing the whole area. So it would make sense that you can start where Sunny should be able to start where he wants here when I'm serving, because it would limit the amount of footwork that's needed to get in system. Like, if Sunny starts right here, he could be the one to get here on your right open. I would already basically be in your lefty open. But because he can't start there, now I have to run through 2 quadrants, 1, 2, to now get on your righty open. I won't always have the time for that. And
Yeah.
again, this also depends on the landing zone of your receive, but we're not going to get super technical right now. I just want to emphasize that we got in system. Because we got in system, the chance of us getting a touch with big ball boundary against a fantastic hitter like yourself is still high. Adam gives that set a little bit too much height. You're waiting for it. This gives more time for Sunny to now come through A to B and affect the range. It gives me a little bit more time to back up and get more quality of touch. And then we get the touch. And we get the touch despite you both being in system, but we're in system as the defense. And this is again why it's important the non-server rule comes in and shows the importance of why setting height threshold is important and how good Sunny does from going through A to B. Like, this is the game is becoming more balanced where you get rewarded for doing the right things. If this was pro ball, no boundary, Tom, you'd have ripped the absolute shit out of this and we would have never got the touch. I would have probably had to put my hands up and tried to touch this jumping at 3 feet. And if you saw me leave the ground, you would have just hit it through my legs.
Yeah. You're talking the rover rule, right? Where like they can.
Yeah.
There's 2 versions, right? There's the one where they could start wherever, and there's one where they could start moving when we take
Yeah,
service.
there's one start moving, me and Jules still did it where we would just wait to take our step until the player was in position. And in Europe, we had 5 seconds, not 3 seconds. So we could actually utilize the rule, which again, North America can do their own stuff.
We were utilizing it, all right.
Well, you couldn't really utilize much of it with only 3 seconds because you can't be that quick and get where you want to. And if you was, then I'm calling 3 seconds every time because you taking more than 3 seconds on your fakes, Tom. Anyway.
No, you can get there, but definitely not as much time for sure.
Yeah, your time winner just reduces, and then you can be caught in the rotation period when you're not actually in the movement period of getting in system. Anyway, my point to that was now test package B, non-serve can start where they want, so it's great. Now the footwork demanded to get in system in defense is so much less, and that's fantastic. So we can ensure we get in system more often. Just like it's important to get in system on serve receive and hitting, we want to be in system on defense. Anyway, let's move on. We have some more big ball boundary footage. This time we're playing with 25 feet, so 7 meters. We're playing indoors in Michigan. And you can see there just wasn't really any diagonal trajectory when we played these games. It was all low lateral hits.
Yeah.
Like, even when you was like off net hitting or bit, you were still like trying to hit it as low as you could. I don't think there's any booms or chip shots here, which was sort of the biggest issue with such a small boundaries. Then you completely take away the big rundowns and also the chip shots over the defense. Everything had to go around or through, which lacks a little bit depth on the sport, which is a shame, I think.
Yeah, we still want those rundowns and stuff. We still want some of those plays, you know. This was a fun day though. I remember this. I like the we had those boundaries there, the barriers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was bigger though. This was back to 30 feet.
Yeah, we were 30 here.
Yeah.
There we go. Yep, chipping it because offset, right?
Yeah. Offset, chipping it. Yep.
And then we get defensive touch and we get it back.
Still have a lot of variety on serve. You just hit a step out, lefty reverse. Still like great off net hitting, and then just setting. Yeah, and everyone's I think just a lot more conscious of where they're setting than before. And before it was just like just set the ball. Doesn't matter if it's too much height. Doesn't matter where it is. Just set the ball to the net. Like right now, I'm really trying to lead Emerson right in this gap here because you're out of system. If you guys aren't opposite in defense, you should not get touches, especially against good setters, good hitters, and that's the way it should go. I put this now on the right-hand sweet spot when I put it on the left-hand sweet spot. And so now M has to hit towards you. Or he probably potentially could find a few more squares. But with big ball, it's harder to find those few squares. You're going to hit towards the majority more often and go for higher percentage shots, which again benefits defense. And then you guys get a bad touch and you don't convert it.
Yep.
But like, you can actively see just like how the game is so much more balanced now. You're just not doing like the principles of the sport. Again, it's the principles. It's not mine. It's everybody's principles that are contributing. Preston, Fred, Buddy, you know, a lot of even the teachings I teach of the sport are their information. It's just putting it in order and adding more principles to it. But it's just the sport it's just the principles and the language around it. Just like you have principles of football and top teams follow them because you have to if you want to, in order to be successful.
Yeah.
If teams just don't follow, then you can just manipulate them. Yeah. So that was the big ball boundary footage. Any observations that you guys took from that watching it back?
You definitely get punished a lot more for every little tiny thing that you do wrong. And you are very much rewarded for doing things properly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's that much more I could say about it though before, you know. It's fun. I like it a lot from what we've been playing. I do think little rules, like how we were saying the rover rule helps. I do think like not being able to hit on 2 or 1 on the first possession, that was one I wasn't expecting to like, but I ended up loving. I think we found with the big ball and boundary, I'm not saying it's the only option, but I think we found a combo that like gives us a great base to work with, where little rules attached on it could help us get to somewhere final for 2026.